So one of the most important components on your Mac is going to be the hard drive. And the hard drive is the storage component of your computer. That is where all your memories, all your work documents, so all your pictures, movies, anything you create, anything you save can be saved on that hard drive. And because of that, it's fairly important for you to keep this thing in good shape. Nowadays, with the cloud, with external drives, you can store and, more importantly, you can back up a lot of your data somewhere else other than just the main hard drive on your computer, and that's a really important thing to be able to do. So we'll be talking a little bit more about the hard drive, how it works in just a little bit. So the other really important part of a Mac computer would be the RAM, or the random access memory. And the reason why it's there is because while your traditional hard drive stores a lot of information, it's fairly slow. The way the traditional hard drives work was that you have a disk with a spindle, and so it has moving parts and it's reading information and it's moving back and forth, which is not really the fastest thing around. So when you're working either with a lot of applications or you're working on video editing or something that's fairly intensive, what the Mac will do is that it will temporarily transfer information from the hard drive to the RAM, which are more like little computer chips. And that allows you to get much better performance while that information is on the RAM. So you need ideally at least, let's say, 8 gigabytes of RAM on a modern Mac in order to work quite well. If you have less than that, you're probably going to get the spinning beach ball quite a bit. You're going to get a lot of slowdowns, and that's just not that fun. All right, next we have the CPU, or Central Processing Unit. And what this is basically the brains of the computer. So if you're running a modern Macintosh, you have an Intel chip inside, and you've seen the commercials. But basically, this does all the computing, all the processing. It doesn't matter if you're doing a very simple addition in the calculator app, or if you're doing some crazy movie editing or a spreadsheet. This is what's doing the heavy lifting. And even though it's a pretty small little part inside of your computer, this is really where everything's happening. So next we have the logic board, also sometimes called the motherboard. And if you think of the CPU as the brains of your computer, the logic board is more like the central nervous system. It's the part that links everything on your computer together. So your hard drive feeds into the logic board, which feeds into the monitor. The CPU is built into the logic board. So everything's connected to this logic board. And it's a lot of circuits. We'll take a look at it, an image of it in a little bit. But if the logic board goes bad, obviously your computer is in a world of hurt. And finally, we have the battery. And the battery obviously is really important if you're on a laptop. But the health of the battery is going to dictate a lot of stuff you can do with your computer. If you have a battery in good shape, you can work for hours without being plugged in. The battery is very susceptible to water damage, so a lot of times when you get liquid in the computer, the battery is what gets damaged and causes all kinds of issues. So you do want to be mindful of your battery and how to take good care of it, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. All right, so I also want to give you an idea of what these things look like in real life. This is a traditional hard drive. This is the kind of hard drive you would find inside of a MacBook Pro, let's say. And usually it's been a disk with a spindle. And so even though you can store a lot of information on these, this is why they're a little bit slow, is because this arm has to move around and look for information and feed it to the computer. This is also why they're fragile and can break. There's a lot of moving parts, and if something goes wrong and you really damage one of these drives, you have to take it to a data recovery place, and if it's bad enough damage, it's going to cost a lot of money because they have to open these up in a sterile environment inside of a clean room, and that's where your cost can all of a sudden go from a few $100 to a few $1,000s. And then you have RAM. So this is what RAM usually looks like. And as you can see, there's no moving parts. It's more of a chip, and having just 8 to 16 gigabytes of RAM on any modern computer will speed things up dramatically. And then very quickly, we're going to look at the Intel chip that is most likely inside of one of your computers. So as I've said, these are fairly small, but this is really where all the work gets done. So this is soldered onto the logic board of your computer, and CPUs are inside of also your iPhone, inside of a Apple Watch, inside of all computers. And then finally, this is a picture of a Mac logic board. So this is essentially a component. It's all the circuitry that links everything together. So the battery feeds into it, and then it feeds into the monitor. This one has RAM built into it, the CPUs on it. So this is the kind of the skeleton of your computer, and a very crucial part of the computer as well. All right, so hopefully that was a fairly useful or at least informative overview of different parts of your Mac. That is about as techy or geeky as this course is going to get. We're not going to be talking about these components much more after this, but I do feel like it's important to have at least a base understanding of some of these parts and how they work. And if you have any feedback and want to let me know what I could explain better, I'll be glad to listen to you. Okay, thank you.